Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Naveed and Ikra. I hope both of you can hear me just fine.
Assalamu alaikum ji, I can hear you.
Excellent.
I'm just calling Dr. Ali. He's joining in like a minute.
Sure. We've still got 2 minutes left, so.
Okay, thanks.
Dr. Naveed, are we audible to you? Because your mic is muted.
I hope we don't end up having some internet issues since there has been some major issues around internet since last evening, I think.
I hope so. I mean, our internet service provider informed us that things have been fixed overnight. So hopefully we won't have that problem, but we'll have to see how it goes.
I think we are on board with all our guest speakers as well. Dr. Naveed, I see that you joined us. We will now officially begin our DLS session.
Jiveria, I think your voice is very low. Maybe you can speak up a little. I don't know if that's just me or if it's everyone.
No, yes, Javeria's voice is also low, and I think there's some connectivity issues on your end as well.
On my end or Javeria's?
Javeria's.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Naveed. Thank you for joining in. You're on mute, sir. So can we just do a sound check?
Is it any better?
Yes, all good. Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Naveed.
वालेकुम अस्सलाम, कैसी हैं आप?
बिल्कुल ठीक ठाक. How are you?
अल्लाह का शुक्र है.
Julia, do you want to go ahead and start?
Yeah, I think we're going to start our session now. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Yeah, I think Dr. Ali has also joined.
All right.
All good to go.
With that being said, the topic for our discussion today is Rebuilding Pakistan Through Technology and Entrepreneurship. We're joined here by Dr. Naveed Sherwani. He's our distinguished guest lecturer. And with that, we also have our discussants, Ms. Ikra Masaktu from SDZA and Dr. Muhammad Ali Muhammad from SDZA as well. Before we begin this session, I would hand over this to Dr. Hussain Nadeem, who's our Executive Director at IPRI, for his opening remarks.
Julia, thank you so much, and a good morning and a good evening, late at night, wherever you are. On behalf of Islamabad Policy Research Institute, I would like to welcome our esteemed chief guest, Dr. Naveed Sherwani, and discussants and panelists, Ikra and Dr. Ali as well. I also have with us Ambassador Asif Ali Durrani, who's joined us on Zoom at the moment. The discussion today is very important, and I'll give you just one brief background about why we are hosting this event and why we have invited Dr. Naveed Sherwani to speak about this thing. Is rebuilding Pakistan via technology. And the reason why this is important is because IPRI is engaged in a lot of track two dialogues with the United States and other countries in the world, where the conversations are now going beyond the traditional engagement, in traditional trade, traditional engagement over bilateral relations and everything. We are more interested in pitching Pakistan as a future technology hub. We want to build our capacity on the technology side. And I think the work recently done by STZA and Amir Hashmi Saab is one evidence of how technology has taken the center stage of that. There is also another element to it, that's my personal work experience working in the public sector reforms and the government, is I do believe that the window of reforms, the traditional level of reforms, and our interest in working on traditional economy and traditional industries is long gone. To put it in a different way, we're trying to build Pakistan in the 21st century using the tools of the 19th century with the mindset of a very 16th, 17th century industrialization. It's not working. It will not work. The changes we have seen in the last 20 years, just in the digitalization process and technology process, how those technologies have shifted our work processes, our mindset within the government setup, is radical. Yet somehow or the other, that is not translated into the policy action at the national level, despite the fact that in 2010, when the World Banks and the ADBs were trying to get the government machinery to use email addresses instead of the electronic system instead of the filing system. I think we bypassed that entire board of e-office systems and moved directly from management of the files to transferring those files on WhatsApp. So much of what goes around in the government function, as radical and as crazy as it is, the government, even the national security establishment, is run on WhatsApp. A very dangerous thing, yet there is no second opinion, second alternate around it. I do know that the government has tried very hard, the Ministry of IT, to develop their own apps that can allow the different government departments to integrate with each other and share documents. But after using those apps for a week or so, the officials decided that it's much convenient and better to use WhatsApp, which may be even more secure than our own government app. So the element of technology I have seen in the last 10, 11 years evolved very quickly and has become now at the center stage. Again, these are very prominent discussions we are having with our American friends and the British friends in terms of where we can build technology partnerships. But my concern over there, and that is the last point I want to make before I invite Dr. Naveed Sharwani to talk about it, is that the people leading the technology discussions are not competent or do not have the relevant background to have a dialogue with different partners around the world in the technology space. So there is a challenge, real challenge of how do we bring the tech capacity at the forefront of our dialogues with the international governments and with the other organization. The second element also is the fact that Pakistan's current situation at the moment, and I will comment on that as well, because we're undergoing a radical shift in terms of political uncertainty and the political chaos. And if you scratch a little bit on the surface, one realizes that much of the political chaos right now and uncertainty is partly triggered by a very exponential growth of digitalization in Pakistan, where social media has become a new narrative making machine, has bypassed the traditional modes of communications, including the press releases, the media houses. And now with social media, it has decentralized and democratized information, where an individual who's 16-year-old would wake up from the bed one day and could just tweet about schooling the prime minister or the finance minister on how to better run the economy. The voice is there, and those voices are becoming very prominent in a way which is shifting the national narrative into all sorts of directions. So technology has its own consequences, it has its own opportunities. What we want to hear from Dr. Naveed Sharwani is, who has an extensive experience both in the Silicon Valley and is invested, as I understand, majorly in the Pakistan, in the chip design and the chip manufacturing, the potential of the technology. We all know there is a lot of potential. But if you could also comment based on your own personal background working in Pakistan and with the different organizations and interacting with them, on really the tangible way forward for Pakistan in using tech space as a future for Pakistan's new economy. With that, I would like to thank everyone who have joined us here. And I'm looking really forward to the remarks of Dr. Shirvani and also the discussion by Ikra and Dr. Ali. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sen, for setting the precedent for this discussion. And before we move on to Dr. Naveed Shirvani, allow me to introduce all our speakers. Dr. Naveed Shirvani is a well-known semiconductor industry veteran, and he has over 30 years of entrepreneurial and engineering management experience. He's widely recognized as an innovator and leader in the field of design, of automation, etc. He's currently chairman and CEO of Rapid Silicon. And while serving as president, he has been recognized as the leader of the most respected private semiconductor company, which has been a record 5 times by the GSA, the Global Semiconductor Alliance. He also serves as the chair of the open source FPGA. On top of that, Dr. Naveed is both a PhD and a master's degree in computer engineering at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and a BA degree at NED University in Karachi. He has also authored several books and has over 100 articles on various aspects of VLSI, physical design and automation, and ASICS. Before we move on to hear what Dr. Shirvani has to say, I would also like to introduce our discussants that have joined us today. Thank you so much for taking out the time. We've got on board Ms. Ikra Musaddiq, who is currently working as a Director Licensing, Legal and Contracts at the Special Technology Zones Authority, DSTZA. She's responsible for providing strategic leadership in implementing licensing legal compliance objectives of STZA. And apart from that, she has been leading the legal corporate affairs of Grana and Amart Group, and she has also been a winner of the award Law Without Walls, a program hosted by the University of Miami. She has been working with startups across the globe in the legal tech industry for over 10 years. She also serves as the advisory board of KCAP Ventures. It's a venture capital firm based in Dubai. She's passionate about supporting startups and creating and implementing their legal compliance, sustainability strategies, etc. We're also joined by Dr. Muhammad Ali Muhammad, who has been working at the STZA as well since May 2021. He serves in the capacity of Director of Research Market Intelligence, where he is responsible for technology research, public research, and market intelligence and technology upskilling, and assisting relevant policy domains. He's been affiliated with NUST and was an assistant professor there and also a director of research. He is still affiliated in the capacity of an adjunct faculty. His specialization and research interests revolve around micro and nanofabrication technologies, micro and molecular dynamic simulations. On top of that, he has done his bachelor's and PhD from the University of Alberta, Canada, in electrical and computer engineering. And his specialization, as I mentioned, is research interest in nano devices, etc. With that being said, Dr. Shirvani, let's get to you for our discussion that we've based around the idea of rebuilding Pakistan through tech and entrepreneurship. So we've seen technology encapsulating a wide range of subjects and areas now, and in the economic terms, as Dr. Sen highlighted, it's often highlighted as one of the most important ways forward for Pakistan. Also, in an interesting article by James Andrew, he pointed out that the technological base has become a major determinant of national and geopolitical power as well. So given the contemporary context, Pakistan is grappling with national and international uncertainty, with the economy that's constantly dilly-dallying from default to no default. Is technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship really the saving grace for Pakistan? Dr. Naveed, your remarks.
First of all, thank you very much for the privilege and honor to speak to such an august gathering. So I think I am always a person, when it comes to Pakistan, my glass is always full. It's not half full, it's always full. So I'm always the person who's very positive on Pakistan. And I think it comes from the fact that I would like to see a way forward. What can we do? As opposed to always looking at sort of the negativity of the situation, I would like to see whatever challenges that we have right now. So how can we steer our self out of this scenario, right? So my point of view today, first of all, is that as far as rebuilding Pakistan economy is concerned, I believe, as I think several people have pointed out, really there is no other option except relying on technology, right? So I think technology is the only way forward to cut short the path from 15, 20, 30-year cycle to 3, 4, 5-year cycle. We have seen other countries do it. We can do it. And of course, we can see how mobile phone changed everything around. Of course, we have a lot more things to do in Pakistan. If we can move, let's say, our banking onto it, our social services onto it. And a very good example of how mobile phone can be used to the limit is China. I recently spent close to a year in China. I lived there. If you live in China, you will notice one thing is that they have an app called WeChat. And China actually runs on WeChat. If you have actually WeChat, you don't need an ID, you do not need a driver's license, you do not need a credit card, you don't need cash. From arranging a wedding to a birth of a child, a hospital visit to a funeral, believe me, everything can be done on WeChat. It is one integrated platform. You don't have to enter your payment information. Everything can be done. The benefit of that is you see how the society becomes extremely efficient. Most Chinese can do most things that we think, and I'm not talking about Pakistan, I'm talking about United States. Whatever we do and takes 10, 15, 20 minutes, same thing takes 5 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute in China. So just by using QR codes, WeChat, and a national integrated system, China has really made life for their citizens very, very simple. Everything, all government services are available. I mean, if you want to buy a ticket to go from your home in one city to another home in other city, you could actually literally use WeChat to first get a chichi, then you can get a train ticket, then you get an airplane ticket, then you can get on the car on the other side, all in a single swipe of a WeChat. So as far as technology is concerned, I think technology, how much and how quickly can we integrate into Pakistan economy, it's going to be our saving grace. Second important thing, I think, is how the number of jobs have now become mobile. Thanks to COVID, thanks to Zoom, or many other things that have happened in the last 3-4 years, now millions of jobs are available in all over the world, but more so in US and China. And I think time and again, we have highlighted just in one field, in our field, my field of semiconductors, close to 1 million jobs are available for anybody who can be trained in 9 to 10 months. And that job can easily pick a number around $20,000 to $30,000 a year. Those are the kind of jobs. And among this million jobs, 500,000 jobs are in China. Those jobs are available. Those jobs can be done. And of course, China is trying to bring up their headcount as possible, but 500,000 jobs that I'm talking about are one that China cannot fill by themselves. This is not that they don't have enough universities. They have a lot of universities. They have thousands of universities. But China has a demand of workforce in many, many areas. But in our area, we estimate they need about 500,000 people in the next 3 years from somewhere other than China. And if Pakistan can fulfill 100,000 of those jobs, actually no more than a computer connection, some design tools, and a workstation or a laptop is needed essentially. And we have demonstrated already in Pakistan that with 9 to 10 months of training, we have very bright men and women in Pakistan who can be trained quickly and they can do these jobs. And we have many people, close to 200 already trained, and they're working in several companies in Pakistan today. So I think the one technology definitely, but the second, the number of jobs that are available. Now, number of jobs are not just simply available in semiconductor. I think there are many other software fields. I think we are looking very deeply into DevOps. In San Jose area alone, I think there are about 55,000 DevOps jobs are available. Worldwide, I think there's closer to 500,000 to 750,000 DevOps jobs are available. Then you can look at AI ML jobs. Again, the job runs into millions of people that are needed. So I think the second trend is mobile jobs that can be done using a laptop, a computer, decent training are now available. They are in several million. They do need maybe English speaking skills. They need some engineering training. They do need ability, somehow to connect and be able to get those. So I think that is the second thing. But the third important thing is building the ecosystem in Pakistan, right? So I think, yes, technology will help. Yes, there is demand out there, but that is not going to bring the jobs to Pakistan. I think the other two very important component of doing that is building an ecosystem in Pakistan. What do we mean by ecosystem in Pakistan? For example, how do we actually train these people in Pakistan? Okay, so Naveed Shawani can start a training institute, can train 200, 300, 500 people. That's not going to make a dent. We need to have a training system in Pakistan which can train, let's say, at one go 50,000 people, 60,000 people in one particular track. If we are going to train 100,000 people in 3 years, there has to be some system like that, right? Like, for example, I think we can easily deploy 100,000 or 200,000 people in DevOps. But do we have a training system in Pakistan that can train? Recently, we just finished a training of about 400 people in Islamabad in DevOps. That's 400 people, right? The question is, what would it take to scale the system up to 4,000 people or 10,000 people or something like that to meet the kind of demand that we need, right? So that is the second element, is that what kind of infrastructure that we have in Pakistan to use the technology to train the people to fulfill the needs that, now these needs will be created by people setting up their design centers in Pakistan. These needs can be created by companies in US, Europe, China, hiring people in Pakistan. But in order to do that, we have to have people in these countries somehow creating this demand. And that brings us to the third component. And we think our third component is building international awareness. It is, if you talk to an average semiconductor person in US or in China, they would not even know that it is possible to set up a design center in Pakistan. They don't even know that we already have several companies which are actually doing very high quality work in Pakistan in semiconductor. They don't even know that Pakistani universities are already training students in some of the later technologies like RISC-V and other semiconductor technologies that are relevant. So I think building that kind of awareness is very important. And we'll discuss one such plan that we have been working on. And final component is financing. How do you actually finance something like that? It is going to be, of course, public-private. Public will show you an example of what we are doing there. But on the private side, we think we need to have many more VC funds that we have to, through our international awareness campaign, get them interested in Pakistan. And we recently launched one we call Pakistan Catalytic Fund, and I'll talk about that. So these are the essential components. So the component number one, technology is driving jobs which are available worldwide, which can be done via internet connection, via having a laptop, things like that. Fact one. Fact number two, that we have that kind of a trainable manpower, a human power in Pakistan that can fulfill those needs. Of course, we have to put an ecosystem in place to train those resources. And third, we have to build the awareness worldwide so that people know such people are available and how can that be done. And we'll discuss some ideas. And finally, financing, at least financing of the startups. And our approach towards financing is how can we bring the international quality of VCs to Pakistan, the processes that they go through, and how can we show that international VCs that Pakistan is an interesting place for them to be. So finally, before I give you two examples that we are working on, one on the semiconductor side and one on the Pakistan Catalytic Fund, I want to make a comment about what you talked about, chaos in Pakistan, where economy has its own challenges and then we have political challenges. So as entrepreneur, I always talk about I work on problems that I can solve. What it means is that if I have no control over something, I cannot do anything about it. I don't worry about it because I just can't do anything about it. I choose to participate in that economy or not participate in economy is my choice. But once I have decided to go do something, I focus on only those things which are in the control that we have, right? It's something we can do. So that's most of the entrepreneurs think like that. But you look at where we are working. We are working in China these days. US-China relationship is extremely tense, right? It probably is much worse than whatever is happening in Pakistan. Everything that you do in China is being watched very carefully. There is a warlike mindset when it comes to Taiwan, right? A lot of the work we do is in Taiwan. Most of the production that we do in many of our semiconductor companies all relate to to Taiwan. So business is going on in Taiwan. Business is going on in China. Business is going on between US and China, despite all these extremely challenging conditions. So I think using that as an example, I would say business should still be possible between US and China. And yes, political situation will find its own way. And of course, Pakistan economic worries will find its own way. But I think we should continue to work the best we can, try to convince other people to work as much as they can, and always, try to put as a positive a view as we can to create those opportunities. And I think this is the approach, at least I would take. So with those comments, I wanted to take two examples of what we are doing in Pakistan despite these challenging situations. And we'll quickly go through those at a very high level. But then I would like to spend the rest of the time in discussion and saying that, maybe that would be more relevant. So first things that we are working on is this whole idea that how we can use technology, semiconductor technology, to create jobs in Pakistan. So I think I don't have to impress upon all of you that semiconductor is the heart and soul of the world economy today. Actually, it is such important technology that every nation in the world is now thinking about what to do. And Diana, if you go to the next slide, it tells you that it's a technology which is fairly complex. I mean, in the sense that we have a design element of that, there's a manufacturing element to that, there's a package and test element to that. It's fairly complex. It is currently spread over 70 countries. There are thousands of companies that they do that. And in the next slide, we tell you it is around a $600 billion business, which is going towards a $1 trillion business in the next 5 years. So it's a $1 trillion business. So once something is a $1 trillion business, country like Pakistan, first of all, can afford not to participate. We should be. That's one reason. It's a huge business. But the second thing is that semiconductors are now becoming very important for the sovereignty of the nation. This is the reason which is behind the trade war between China and US, is both China and US feel that semiconductor is very important for the sovereignty of the nation. And if it is important for the sovereignty of the nation, they cannot be in a situation where some other nation controls the supply chain. So how can China get to its self-sufficiency, which is what they declared in 2015, which led to US reacting to that. And now US is trying to move the supply chain independent of China into US. It is our opinion as both of their efforts are actually futile. It's not possible given how complex the supply chain is that in the next 10, 15, 20 years, that either of this nation will be able to actually isolate the supply chain and completely. But I think what they would like to achieve is what we call mutual strategic interdependence, means that each nation has enough on the table that you can continue to negotiate and ensure that the rest of things that you don't have control over, you still get access to that. And I believe that is the strategy they should be following. But coming back to our topic, semiconductor business, very important, strategically important to Pakistan from financial reasons as well as from a point of view of sovereignty. So let's go to the next slide. So where is the opportunity coming from? The opportunity is actually coming towards Pakistan because of the US-China trade war. Because of the US-China trade war, what is happening is that previously what used to happen is that we will design one chip and the same chip will be used by US and the same chip will be used by China. I'll give you an example. GPS, the Global Positioning System. It was invented about 35, 40 years ago by DARPA, US Department of Defense. Eventually, those hundreds of satellites were made available to the world and everybody was using GPS. People woke up when Iraq war happened is that if US wants, it can turn off the GPS system in any country. And as a result, that the GPS system is not available to you. Then what do you do? So as a result, first China started it, then Japan, then European Union, then Russia, then India. So eventually now we have 7 different GPS systems in the world. What does it mean? Previously, there was one chip has to be designed, it can be used by everybody. But now 7 chips have to be designed for 7 different systems because the frequencies on they operate, the encryption is different, everything is different. Now, that is just on that system. But when China and US have decided to be independent of each other, which means every chip that they were sharing, they will not share anymore. Now they have to be designed separately. What does it mean? It means millions of new designers are needed to design these chips, which were never needed before. Now they are needed. Where are these designers going to come from? This is the opportunity that we have these million plus designers needed, and China alone needs 500,000. US and the rest of the country needs another 500,000. And our universities in US, in China are unable to quickly create these people to meet the demand. So this is where the opportunity comes from. And this is where we think that is this an opportunity then Pakistan can take care of, right? So if you look at the opportunity itself, next slide, Dan. We think it's about a $3 to $4 billion opportunity for Pakistan. How do we compute that? We compute that now, of course, if we were to say a $3 to $4 billion opportunity for Pakistan, it's a great opportunity. It's a big opportunity. It's not a big opportunity for China. It's not a big opportunity for US, but it is a big opportunity for Pakistan, right? Given the size of our exports, the size of our economy. Where is this opportunity coming from? The opportunity is coming from, we think that out of this million people that are needed, Pakistan can supply 100,000 people into this particular situation. So this is the classical situation that we have the manpower, very trainable. The 1 million people cannot come from China, or at least not quickly enough. They cannot come from US. We don't have the headcount. Cannot come from India. Why? India is already overrun by semiconductor companies. I'll tell you an example of one of our companies in India lost 24% of its headcount in 1 year, which means we will have to replace out of 100 employees, 24 employees this year. We feel next year is going to be even worse. So there is a 24% turnover rate. That's not one problem. The other problem is nobody is staying in their job for more than a year. So which means they don't have enough time to train. Third, the salaries are coming within 30% of US, especially at the high end. And for the very high end, meaning people are director, a higher level, they actually demand US salaries. So the cost advantage is gone. So which means these jobs cannot be in India, or at least substantial part of these jobs cannot be in India. This, we believe, is a very historic opportunity for Pakistan. Now, such opportunities do come and countries do miss it. In 1997, similar opportunity came because of Y2K. Many nations around the world looked at it, but only one nation actually took advantage of that. At that time, India's total software export, I believe, was less than $1 billion or something like that, a small number. If you look at India's software export today, I believe the number is somewhere in the range of $160 billion in 20 years. But they got their start at that historic moment of Y2K, when the nations around the world needed help, when the companies around the needed help. India stepped up. Infosys, many other companies in India, Tata and Wipro and every just geared up, deployed hundreds of thousands of people solving Y2K. And once the Y2K was over, they had trained people. Eventually, they used them to build up their software services business, which is huge now. As I said earlier, it generates over $160 billion. So I think that is the opportunity we are chasing. So what have we done to chase that opportunity? What we did was we actually set a national goal for Pakistan. So this was done with the help of the President of Pakistan's office, Prime Minister's office, several ministries. Of course, STZA was involved in there as well. And the idea is very, very simple. Let's set a goal for Pakistan. What do we want to see in 5 years? What do we want to see in 7 to 10 years? What do we want to see eventually in the long term for Pakistan? And we wrote actually a document, a plan for Pakistan, which is called Pakistan National Semiconductor Plan, which basically sets down the various different agenda items, the various different things that need to be done, what would be the cost of doing something, what is the benefit of doing something. It was done with the help of several different agencies in Pakistan, from Ministry of IT, Ministry of Science and Technology, STZA, CPAC, and many universities were involved in that, from NUS to NED to FAST, and many other universities are involved. Several foreign experts were involved in doing that. So all of that we put together, and we put a plan together which basically calls for improving the infrastructure for training in the universities, which calls for setting up training centers, which calls for incentive plans via STZA, SEZ to bring the design centers in Pakistan, so on and so forth. The whole policy consists of 8 or 9 different elements and basically shows a path how we can bring 100,000 high-paying jobs to Pakistan and thereby create a huge opportunity. So this is one example I want to take. I think even with the turmoil of Pakistan, we are still continuing. We are working on several projects which are part of this Pakistan Semiconductor National Plan, which is they're going on. They are basically related to setting up design centers in Pakistan. They are related to setting up training centers in Pakistan. They are related to setting up OSAT, outsource assembly and test facilities in Pakistan. All these projects are in various different stages of development. The total investment that is envisioned is around $230 to $250 million. The component of the government is mostly related to upgrading the universities and training centers. That's about 90 million component. Rest of the component will come from private sector outside of Pakistan by investing in setting up those factories, plants, and design centers. So that is one example. Quickly, let me take the second example. Diana, let's skip to Pakistan Catalytic Fund. So the next example is, what can we do to actually help facilitate setting up more startups in Pakistan? So we think the most important thing is that there are funds which are working on seed stage and early stage, and they're doing that. But we think the most important help we can do on that side of the equation is we need to create exits. And so that's why we have created Pakistan Catalytic Fund. The purpose of Pakistan Catalytic Fund is to identify 10 or 15 opportunities in Pakistan which fulfill about 6 criteria. So if you look at the 6 criteria, it simply says that we should have one where the business model is proven, they have some revenue. Then we inject a lot of senior people into the company, increase the revenue. And and then build up the company, identify opportunities outside of Pakistan. People are willing to acquire such companies like that and then create an exit for. So not only we will invest money into these companies, we will invest other VCs, invite other VCs to invest, we'll inject management and other resources into the company, build up the company. But more importantly, the key thing we want to do is exit these companies, because only when people sitting outside of Pakistan see exit of these companies, which will allow them to see a path forward for their investments, and we'll get more and more investments. So that is one reason we have launched this activity in Pakistan. We have been contacted by over 200 startups. We are actually currently evaluating them. I think we are close to choosing the first three of them. And so this fund of ours is about $50 million fund. And we plan to invest, about 5 million or so in each company. But that would be about 1/4 of the investment, which means we will raise another $150 million from other associated supporting funds to invest a total of $200 million into 10 to 12 companies, but take them all the way to exit. So let me sort of summarize. The three things I would again emphasize is that I believe that we must identify relevant technologies that can help grow jobs in Pakistan. So I think in our case, it is semiconductor technologies, it is DevOps, it is AI. All of these are extremely needed outside, and lot of millions of jobs are needed. And I think Pakistan can supply those jobs. The second is building an ecosystem. How can we, create a fund is one, but training institutes, universities have to play a role. Of course, government has a role. But as I said, you'll have to put together a plan for such an ecosystem, and gave you an example of Pakistan Semiconductor National Plan, which actually attempts to build such an ecosystem for semiconductor opportunity in Pakistan. And finally, we'll have to create international awareness. For that, in US at least, we have started a conference we call Invest in Pakistan. We started that 3 years ago. Several editions of that conference have happened. We have requested Pakistan government to start consulate officers positions in China, 3 of them in Shanghai and Shenzhen and Beijing. And we have also requested that a new consulate office to be set up in Silicon Valley, which has now been approved, and it is in a process of being set up. We believe these are the kind of things we can do to build up awareness of these opportunities in Pakistan. So let me stop here with my comments, and we can have a discussion. But the idea really was that selecting the right technologies, then building an ecosystem, and then building an international awareness potentially can bring some opportunities to Pakistan, help in this situation, and hopefully this can be done while the turmoil continues in Pakistan.
Thank you so much, sir, for this very in-depth presentation that you provided us with. There was a lot that was being unpacked here, from geopolitics to economics, and then the idea of actually for Pakistan to position itself as a $3 to $4 billion opportunity that it can pretty much acquire through a semiconductor industry. And this obviously echoes with what I've heard from you often as a chip sovereign, the idea of becoming a chip sovereign nation. With that being said, I would like to involve our discussants here. Ms. Ikra, let's just start off with you. And having heard Dr. Naveed Shirvani now, I would like your thoughts and comments, plus, of course, with the added legal dimensions of what exactly is Pakistan doing on the legal end of things for this sort of ecosystem to prevail, for this sort of technology to actually find roots, despite the political turmoil that's ensuing.
Thank you, Taveria. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for inviting FTCA to participate in today's event. We're really honored and privileged to be here. Thank you, Dr. Naveed Shirvani, for that fantastic overview and in-depth presentation. I've had the pleasure of interacting with you and discussing this previously with you as well. And hopefully at FTCA, we can work together in working on some of the things that you mentioned within your presentation.
I believe we met at the inauguration of the Lahore Technopolis. That's one. Yes. I think we met there. That was a pretty interesting inauguration ceremony. I remember
Yes.
that one.
Yes. So I think I'll actually pick up from the closing remarks that Dr. Naveed Shirvani made, and I think those resonate completely with what STZA is, and I'll give an overview of what STZA is doing so far and how we can contribute towards this technology industry. So I think Dr. Naveed Shirvani rightly said that we need an ecosystem, we need to create awareness, and we need to identify technologies that are relevant for Pakistan. And we couldn't agree more. At STZA, just for an overview, the Special Technology Zones Authority was passed in October 2021. And our mandate is to provide a world-class digital and physical infrastructure through setting up special technology zones across Pakistan and putting Pakistan on the global technology map, so to speak. And we want to do this through building technology ecosystems for entrepreneurship, R&D, and tech-driven innovation in the country. And we want to introduce the ease of doing business concept along with fiscal and monetary incentives to facilitate the technology sector and promoting technology. Now, it's very important to understand the genesis of the Special Technology Zones Authority. STZA is based on the triple helix model of innovation, which means that you connect academia, industry, and government together to promote technology and bring that system on board. We're decades behind as far as Pakistan is concerned in bringing technology to the forefront. But I see that as an opportunity. You know, challenges are also opportunities. And, you know, we have this plethora of practice that is established across the globe in terms of how technology zones and the triple helix model have led to creation and promotion of technology industries. And I think we can adopt those best practices. And here at STZA, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to adopt those best practices and provide institutional and legislative support for the technology sector. And we work on key KPIs that we want to promote through STZA. Those KPIs are innovation, R&D, local investment, foreign investment, human capital development, job creation, and technology transfer. Those are our KPIs, and those are the KPIs that we forward to our zone developers and zone enterprises as well. Just for the purposes of the audience here, what does STZA do? STZA, this is our mandate, but STZA essentially notifies special technology zones across the country. Within those zones, technology companies can come in either as zone developers or zone enterprises. Zone developers will work with STZA either in the public-private partnership capacity or in a private capacity under a license to build technology parks. And they can bring in co-zone developers as their partners as well, depending on their business needs. Zone enterprises are your technology stakeholders in terms of the businesses that will then come and house themselves in our zones. Together, we'll create that ecosystem then. And in terms of why we're creating this, we've seen time and time again in terms of best practices in China, in India, in the US, and UK, and Europe, across the globe actually, that you have to bring the triple helix model together in order to create that innovation. If there's a university around the corner, you've got institutional support and you've got your R&D centers there, and you've also got your industry there. The industry can actually channelize what they need out of the R&D and university centers to co-create and build and train upon our resources to get those skills. And I think that's critical. In terms of why we're creating these and why Dr. Naveed Shirvani spoke about how Pakistan is a budding destination for semiconductor technology and how we can tap onto that. The government can play a critical role in supporting industries like Dr. Naveed Shirvani mentioned by providing incentives to promote foreign and local investors to invest in these technologies. At STZA, in addition to the ecosystem, we offer monetary and fiscal incentives. We provide a range of tax incentives for both zone developers and zone enterprises. We're also offering special forex regulations with the State Bank of Pakistan to ensure that there's ease of inflow and outflow of forex for your business. And lastly, we provide one window support. One window support means that we take you from red tape to red carpet. And that's something that we like to promote at STZA in terms of building a system where all your, whether you're a foreign or local business, all your regulatory needs are met and catered for. So that's the concept of STZA in a nutshell. It's important to understand our journey so far. So we're almost a year into it. We've established and notified 5 zones so far across Pakistan. We've completed all our regulatory frameworks that are critical for any new startup authority to function. And we've also done considerable outreach, both locally and internationally. My colleague, Dr. Ali, will touch upon our details in that and our outreach efforts. And I think the message that we want to send out through STZA is that we're not your standard conventional government authority. We're a regulator, but we're also a facilitator. And what that means is that any idea that you have, any area that you want promotion on, whether you want local or foreign support, or just want to understand how you can contribute to STZA and the economic goals linked to STZA, we're here to listen. I think another important thing to mention here is that Dr. Naveed Sharwani spoke about venture capital funds. Dr. Naveed Sharwani extremely delighted to hear about Pakistan Catholic Fund and would love to hear more details about that. I think attracting VC funds to Pakistan is critical. Right now, there's a gap in our regulatory framework generally in Pakistan in terms of the barriers to entry for venture capital funds and the amount of regulatory requirements that exist for venture capital funds to register in Pakistan. And then eventually the lack of investor confidence in the political climate in Pakistan, which results in investments being parked in holdcos or offshore. And State Bank has done considerable work in the past few years to introduce a system where Pakistani investors can have holdcos in Dubai and other overseas markets and channel their investment through that. But at STZA, we want to take it a step further, and we're currently in the process of developing a special policy on VC funds to ensure that the remaining barriers are also addressed, because right now your investment is parked in Dubai or other offshore entities, and that investment is coming as and when required into your Pakistan entity. We want to ensure that we tap that market so that direct investment can come into Pakistan as well. So I mean, I can go on and on about what STZA is doing and what our scope is, but I'd like to leave it here in terms of the introduction. And then obviously, if anyone has any questions, we can address those.
Thank you, Ms. Ikra, for highlighting the role of STZA and the legal dimensions that, that you're following with. We've also got on board Dr. Muhammad Ali on board from STZA. So given the discussion that we've had right now, I'd like to know your comments. And also because you're someone whose research area is on nano devices and electrical engineering, etc., not a field that I am much privy with, but I would like your comments on what's the sort of capacity that Pakistan currently has in tapping into that sort of economic opportunity that Dr. Sharwani mentioned. Your thoughts, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank IPRI for having me. And building on the comments of Dr. Hussain Nadeem, Dr. Naveed Sharwani, and Ms. Ikra, my colleague, I would like to add, first of all, that absolutely following technology is imperative for moving Pakistan out of the debt trap. I think we shouldn't mince any words here that we are indeed in a debt trap where every 3 to 4 years we have to go to foreign lending agencies or friendly countries and try to create fiscal space for ourselves to develop. If we keep investing in traditional sectors, those traditional sectors have ROIs of 7, 8, 9 years. And every 3 to 4 years, if we are falling into a certain trap, we can never move faster than the demand, or we can never move faster than the imports that we are doing. Whereas in the case of technology, the ROIs are much faster. Moreover, the output to input ratio is higher. So if you look at Pakistan's technology exports, which were 2.2 billion last year, now more than 2.5 billion. Mostly this is a surplus deal for us, where we are importing considerably less, but exporting more. Even if we look at textiles, which have reached $18 billion of exports, we are still importing a lot of raw material. We are exporting cement, but we still have to use a lot of raw material. And these are not as much export surplus as technology per se. So the ROIs are faster, the output to input ratio is much higher, and I believe technology can very quickly grow to second place after textile in terms of exports. Another point I'd like to make over here before I move directly to the comments of my colleagues is we need to have a ruthless focus on export-oriented sectors. There are about 4 sectors which have reached over $1 billion of export capacity. This includes textile, leather, rice, etc. But then there are many of those, and of course, information technology. But then there are those which are, 300 million odd. This includes cement, this includes pharmaceuticals, this includes fisheries, and other areas. We really need to work on these and other areas to build them into multi-billion-dollar export. And the only way we can do that is targeted government intervention, helping our companies move up the global value chains, and technology enablement / digitization. Coming to some of the comments of my colleagues and your particular question, yes, in Pakistan, we do have a capacity, and echoing the statements of Dr. Naveed Sherwani, it would be surprising, and it is indeed surprising for many of our international friends, that we do have the capacity. Now, with respect to semiconductor design, Dr. Saab has been a pioneer over here, and his efforts over the last 10 years or more have actually enabled 5 to 6 companies in Pakistan to set up their businesses and to actually expand. One such company is actually present at our inaugural Special Technology Zone, which is the new State Life Tower in Blue Area, Islamabad. And this particular company is actually exporting to the United States. And interestingly, the very first thing that they did was they started up a technology boot camp for about 40 to 50 students and reskilled them and enhanced their abilities before they could go into production mode. So that is definitely a success story. I would like to say over here that in the overall arena of semiconductors, 52% of the value is in the design activities. About 24% of the value is in the fabrication, 11% of the value is somewhere in the tooling or the instrumentation. And so within this particular 52% chunk of the design activities, Pakistan can really expand. And right now, what is happening is academia and private sector are sort of doing this on their own. There are 1 or 2 governmental bodies which are having some efforts over here, but those efforts are pretty much for their internal consumption. We need to scale this up. We need to have programs where the government starts off with, let's say, something like a program for 2,000 students, and then to move it up to 10,000, 20,000 and more students which are trained in this area. Ideally, we should go to that 100,000 scale, which Dr. Naveed aptly mentioned, and that would indeed bring us a lot of success. One note on ourselves, on Special Technology Zones Authority, and the area and the various technologies that we've managed to, the technology companies that we've managed to attract. So already there is a company which is working on artificial intelligence-enabled software development. They're doing exports. They are present here locally with us. We have an electronics design firm, a semiconductor design firm. We have a company in property technologies, which is linked up with the United Kingdom. The previous 2 companies are linked up with the United States. Their export markets are the United States. Then we have a communications tech company out of Switzerland. They're also a multinational. And then a fintech company. Now, these are the ones which have already signed up. Some are about to move in. Those include another fintech, another electronics company in another aspect of the value chain. So whereas this particular company is more on physical layer design, that one is on printed circuit boards. So it's a it's a different scale. We have a data center operator that is ready to move in, as well as a company. So we have a mix of companies, and within these, we have different companies at different levels of the value chain. And I think I'll stop my first set of comments over here. If I get more opportunities ahead, I'll continue. But the first set of comments I'll like to close at this end, that Special Technology Zones Authority is taking a very dedicated effort towards the ecosystem development. We are binning companies in various different classifications. We are deliberately trying to attract them. Our Department of Market Intelligence identifies these companies. Our Business and Client Support Services Department reaches out and helps them with their applications. Then we have a wing which does the applications approvals. Then we have the licensing department, which assists with all of the legal and licensing and contract operations. And then we have another department which helps the companies move in and enables their incentives. So it's a very deliberate, very structured effort in trying to bring in the right tenancy mix from actual companies that are working in the technology arena, that are export-focused entities that can be resilient no matter the state of the economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Muhammad Ali, for sharing your remarks. Dr. Sen, if you're still on board with us, I would like to hear your comments before we take the question and answers to Dr. Sherwani.
Actually, I don't have any comment. I have a question. As the Executive Director of IPRI, I'm going to take the liberty to ask the first question. My question is directed to Dr. Naveed Sherwani, and this is related to the regulatory frameworks. Much of the conversations we have with our US counterparts, the fundamental challenge in bringing investment is related to the lax in regulatory frameworks. Which basically means the need for NOCs in Pakistan. I do understand that for the CPEC project, we had around about 57 NOCs needed for any Chinese company, which has now been reduced down to 34. In the technology space, my question is essentially two-pronged. One is the regulatory framework. In what level of the red tape is present at the moment, and if you have any ideas on how to go about fixing that regulatory framework. And second is related to the how we put it, essentially the disjointed bureaucratic system in Pakistan, where different arms of the state are not entirely in sync. I say this thing because this is one of the main elements that came out in one of the Prime Minister's Committee on Social Media and Big Tech, that even within the government setup, the link between FBR, SECP, the taxation systems from federal to local, it's such a hodgepodge that much of the investors we talk to, including large big Metas and the Twitters, they all have this concern related to how do we go about this entire system, which again becomes very costly for companies that are startups that are growing very quickly. So if you could shed a little bit light on that, and I would ask Dr. Ali or IPRI to comment it from this STZA perspective as well. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I think there are many companies which are operating in Pakistan. And I think basically if you have a very strong partner in Pakistan who knows how to navigate the way, right? I mean, which is a similar situation we have in India. So you always start with a very strong partner in Pakistan, and that's how you do it. We have had a 2-year run-in meeting, which was originally chaired by President of Pakistan. Now it is chaired by Sufi Salman Saab. And during that meeting, which was, of course, very often attended by Amir Hashmi Saab as well, very regularly. It was a monthly meeting that went on for almost a year and a half, 2 years, in which we properly documented exactly all the hurdles one by one in a single presentation. All the key stakeholders from State Bank, FBR, Customs, Ministry of IT, CPAC, STZA used to attend those monthly meetings. President of Pakistan would present on them. And so I think we made a lot of progress. But if nothing else, what we also did was we listed all the problems in a single place with all the issues, examples, and what needs to be done. So that document is available. And there is a person by the name of Ajmal Awan who works in Ministry of IT, who was the secretary of this meeting, and that continues those meetings. So I think at least this is the representation of all the issues that Silicon Valley and US entrepreneurs faced, and we have documented that. So that's one. Second, during that 1 year, a year and a half when this meeting went on, we would say out of a list of 30, 35, 40 issues we started with, we probably, but now this list is down to maybe 5 issues or 6 issues, which means a lot of issues have been substantially addressed during this process. So it is much better now than it used to be about a year and a half ago. So that is definitely one positive thing. Still, there are disjointed regulations and things like that. But again, I would say that when we started our first business in China in 2002 and our first business in India in 1997, situation was no better. But again, the way we did that was to find a strong local partner. And then over time, when more and more businesses come, then it gets better because more examples are there and they get addressed, and people, the country sees more ROI. And so there's more incentive to solving those problems. So I would say Pakistan in its development phase is where India was in 1997 and 1998. But we need to have a lot more foreign investment, a lot more examples come in. And as they go through the paces, I think situation will get improved. But I believe people who wanted to start companies have started companies. It's not that bad. And I think it is, yes, I know there are real issues, but at the same time, people who are determined to start companies in Pakistan, start subsidiaries in Pakistan, have been successful in doing so.
Thank you, sir, for taking that question. Dr. Ali, if you would like to, Dr. Hussain, you have your hand raised, I believe. So, all right. Dr. Ali, do you have any remarks for this?
I'd actually like to point to my colleague IPRI, because this question pertains to the facilitation on the licensing side.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. Dr. Zainuddin, that's a very important question. And I mean, I think SCCA has been working a lot on that. And as we continue our outreach efforts, the biggest question that we continue to be asked is, what about those NOCs? What about those regulatory challenges? I think our local companies are still accustomed to, so to speak, face such challenges and somehow navigate those waters. But for new investors that are looking at Pakistan as a possible destination, the unfamiliarity with that obviously raises questions. What we've done at STCA so far on this regard. As far as the legal side is concerned, our act promises a one-window facility. And what we've done in the past 9 months is that we've mapped all the processes for all key regulators, including SECP, FBR, Customs, State Bank, CDA, and other tax-related issues. And what we've done is we've mapped all of these and integrated these physically in our physical systems at the moment. And so as an investor, if you come to Pakistan or within Pakistan, if you come to STCA, any regulatory support that you need can be done through our system. At present, we are running that physically. That means that when you apply for a license and once your license is approved, at present, you have to send us an email or get in touch with us over phone and request support with the State Bank or the FBR or Customs or SECP. But what we are doing in the process is that we've just started working a few months back on our one-window system development. Once our one-window software is ready, not only will all these regulatory NOCs and requests be done through our one-window software, you will also be able to track them online. And we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So we're working with OneLink, we're working with PRAL, we're working with Pakistan Single Window to ensure that the integrations that have already taken place at that level, we integrate them into our system. So then you will not only be able to track your own applications within our one window software, you will also be able to track your applications and with other regulators in Pakistan. And this is for Islamabad, but as far as provinces are concerned, we've been working in the last 6 months with provincial governments and joint working groups to enable this at the provincial level as well. And in the coming quarter, we will be able to provide more updates on that. The idea is that at the provincial level, whether it's your local government authorities or your local development authorities or the DC's office or any other support that you need, that's also integrated into the one window system. So it's a stepwise phase, but we've taken the step. I think the important thing is it's enshrined in law. We've done it in the STCA Act. We took most of the incentives and incorporated them into relevant tax laws. And as a last stage, we also worked with the State Bank to introduce special forex regulations. So groundwork is done. Now we're at the implementation stage. And hopefully in the coming year, we'll be able to crystallize all of this as we speak.
Thank you, Ms. Ikra, for taking that question. We've got a couple of questions in our chat box as well. Ambassador Asif Durrani has also joined us, and he has a question for Dr. Sherwani. That had you been a decision maker in Pakistan, what steps would you take in the IT sector on the global map? Sir, if you would like to answer that.
The question is that what steps we will take to enhance the IT sector in Pakistan?
I believe so.
Yes, I think to me, at least, looks like that we have millions of possibilities, millions of jobs that are available. Those jobs are available now. It's a matter of building a capacity in Pakistan to train individuals, and then finding the connection between where the jobs are, which are mostly in US right now, and building these companies, helping build these companies, creating incentive for these companies to employ those people. And in many cases, those people can actually work through some of these networks themselves as well, because as private contractors, those are opportunities are there as well. So I think right now, the most important thing should be to scale up our training. And now NAFTT, that organization, which is run by Mr. Hassan, they actually do some of that. We recently completed a program of training about 400 people on DevOps, funded by that organization in Pakistan. I think those are the kind of programs are really needed. These are not very expensive programs. I think it takes $200, $300, $500, 4-month program, 6-month program to train these individuals, and they can find their own jobs. So I think if I were to do something in a very short term, and I think it would be to set up more of these training opportunities at a mass scale in all the cities in Pakistan, and then creating as we have said, that our embassies and our outreach in China and in US should be identifying those companies which can take advantage of these people in Pakistan and set up their design centers in Pakistan. So I think those are opportunities that are available right now.
Thank you, sir, for taking that question. I hope, Ambassador Durrani, your question was answered. And drawing upon from your point on US and China, sir, I am interested to know that we've got parallel infrastructures, technology infrastructures, if that's the right thing to say, running in Pakistan, with us being one of the first countries to accept the Beidou system, and then also having technology transfer coming from the US. Then my question is, does Pakistan have that sort of capacity to either integrate these two parallel systems? Because then what about the interoperability of these things? We see the constant clashes on the geopolitical level with Huawei and et cetera, et cetera. So I would like your comments on that. And I would also like comments from Dr. Ali on this matter as well, but Dr. Naveed.
Yeah, I think world is going to go from a place where we had one standard, one type of chips, one software stack, to a world where there will be parallel standards, parallel software stack, and parallel set of chips. It's going to be a very painful place. So I think what it will do, it will force people to choose. Are you in a US camp? Are you in a Chinese camp? Are you on this camp or you in that camp? If you're using Huawei, well, then some of the software that Cisco make won't work with you, right? So I think what we will have to do is sector by sector, we'll have to choose sites. I mean, okay, telecom equipment will come from China because it's cheaper, funded by, some of their state enterprises, things like that. Some of other technology may come from Russia, or Ukraine. I mean, Pakistan used to import a lot of, our helicopter engines, and many aeronautical parts actually came from Ukraine. Lot of our defense needs are supported by France. So I think Pakistan is going to play this game like India and others, is identify in each segment which country you can get the technology from. And unfortunately, there are going to be barriers. People will say, okay, if you work with that country, we won't work with you. If you take this technology from that country, we won't work with you. And then you have interoperability problems because they're all different standards. So this is just going to make things more expensive, more complicated, more prone to errors and problems, and more quality issues. The world is going to be a complicated place. The vision that we have one flat world, things will work, which would have been actually good for the poorer people in the world. Cheaper technology will be available. I believe that world now looks very far away from where it looked about 10, 15 years ago. And we are going to a fractured world in which things are going to be more expensive, more complicated. And I don't really see any other way other than Pakistan needs to build up capacity to work with various different systems. And we will then have to pay the cost of interoperability and all the other things that come with deploying systems from various different protocols and standards.
Yes, I think Dr. Naveed Sherwani very comprehensively addressed that question. I just like to, at the cost of repetition, say that we are already in the stage where we are operating multiple systems in the country, be it education, be it our communications or technologies. So just yesterday, there was the news that we have another optical fiber line coming in from France to Pakistan, which has increased our capacity. But at the same time, that we have this a $40 million optical fiber connection from Rawalpindi all the way up to the Chinese border in the north, which brings in redundancy. Speaking of redundancy, as an engineer, this is a very favorite word of ours. We love redundancy because this helps us to increase our odds of success. I think over here, one different statement which I would like to make is Pakistanis abroad are perhaps one of our biggest assets for technological success, technological enhancement of technological sophistication. Today, we are speaking to an expert in the semiconductor arena. There are Pakistanis who are world-leading experts in cybersecurity. There are experts in automotive technologies. There are experts in other areas of electronics, communications, pharmaceuticals, and many others. I think we need to create an environment where we are able to bring back these Pakistanis, bring back the technologies that they have to offer, because that is one way in which we would be able to ensure that we have a reliable stream of technologies coming back into the country, and also that we are connected to these various international systems. Speaking of cybersecurity, we have experts, Pakistani experts who are working and doing businesses in the United States. We also have experts who are doing businesses in Russia. The ones in the United States are equally trusted by their experts over there, and the ones in Russia are equally trusted by their experts. So we have a lot of leverage through our diaspora, which we really, really need to support. And I think the government over here, the Pakistani government, has to really up its ante in order to ensure that we achieve this technological security and access to technological sophistication going into the future.
At the cost of being a little negative, which I tend to not to be, I am actually disappointed with Pakistan diaspora. And, this is a fairly broad statement, because I've been trying for the last 10, 15 years to get people to invest into Pakistan. And here's a statement I'd like to make. About 7 people who have helped or they've agreed to set up semiconductor companies in Pakistan, 7 people, 4 of them are Indians. This is a statement, this is an amazing statement that I find many Indians willing to go to Pakistan and willing to set up the design centers. Pakistanis talk a lot, yes, this, that, but when it comes to going to their organizations and explaining what is the benefit of setting something in Pakistan, we find that they are not doing that. They're unable to do that. They're unwilling to do that. I mean, simple things like we cannot get PayPal started in Pakistan after 10 years of effort. This is nothing. There are very senior people who work in PayPal, very senior people. I personally know them. The countries like Zimbabwe, PayPal works in Zimbabwe. I mean, that's a joke of a country when it comes to compare. I mean, Pakistan has its issues. I can give you, okay, if you don't like Zimbabwe, I can give you some other examples. Where if there is any criteria for PayPal to work, this is one example, right? Cisco is another example. Marvel is I can give you examples of at least 50 companies in Bay Area where very senior Pakistanis work, and we have not been able to get them to get the dialogue started. Why they are not having a design center in Pakistan? So yes, I think diaspora is a very big asset of Pakistan. At the same time, I think diaspora has not delivered on their promise to Pakistan. It's my view. Maybe a little negative view. I'm more critical of my colleagues here in Silicon Valley, but I have expressed this in Silicon Valley to them directly on their face as well. I would like them to do more for Pakistan than they have done so far.
Thank you, sir, for commenting on that. Ms. Ikra, we'll come to you, but if you don't mind us taking, or perhaps we can come to you and then eventually take the last question for this session, as we are running short on time as well. So, Ms. Ikra, your remarks, and then we'll proceed to the last question of the session.
Yes, thanks, Javeria. Dr. Vicharani, I completely understand your sentiment here. I actually have a perspective on that. I think with our diaspora and also the international community, but let's look at our diaspora. In my view, and based on experience so far at STC, and even before that on different steering committees working with the government, Russian digital accounts is an example. I think the diaspora is willing and able to invest and give back to Pakistan, but they need to see coordinated, consistent efforts from the government. And as you said, it's about creating awareness and raising a campaign and leading that campaign through despite any political changes in the system. And I mean, whether it's VCs that you want to target or any other community, last month we held one of the biggest conferences in the history of Pak-China engagement. We had the China-Pakistan Technology Investment Conference, and we had over 4,200 companies attending, in addition to our Pakistan consulates and different desks in China. We've engaged with different diaspora in the Silicon Valley, in the UK, in the Europe, with different embassies. And I think the continued feedback that we receive from all of them is that they're hopeful when such initiatives come along, but then they want to see coordinated efforts. And until you don't see that, you're very hesitant to take the next step. And maybe that's what we need to do at STC and as a government, that we need to show our diaspora and the international community that our focus, despite shifts in other parts of the country, are still considered towards technology. That's just my 2 cents on that.
But Ikra, tell me, is starting companies in India any easier? Is starting companies in China any easier? I don't think so.
No, it's not, but I think it's a matter of focus. They started 20 years ago. If we're starting now and we expect that we're actually starting now in the technology space, right?
Sure.
Only now in the last few years have we started having these conversations. Now entrepreneurship and startups and VC funds are coming to the forefront. The conversation has just started. So we can't declare ourselves a failure immediately. They took 20 years, 30 years to get there. So I think if we give ourselves another couple of years, we'll reach there, but it has to be pushed as an emergency.
Let me tell you what we do in China. Let me tell you what we do in India. Here's what we do. So what we have done, I have done. For my own group, we have something like 30, 35 companies already registered. We have their bank account set up. They have their, all the registration done. Everything is already done. So when we come up with an idea what to do, we just pick one of the names And then if the name of the company, it's like ABCD, ICRA Technologies Incorporated. When finally we want to do DevOps, we do a DBA of ICRA Technologies. Underlying name will still be ICRA Technologies, but it will start working as Pakistan DevOps Corporation. Done, right? Now, on the surface, it looks like it took only 1 week to get started. In reality, the work was done some time ago, right? Now, I don't believe there is any fundamental problem that if somebody is interested in doing something like that in Pakistan, we cannot do that in Pakistan. We can't do that in Pakistan. So to complain that it takes long time to get approvals in Pakistan and time, I think it used to take same time in China and India, and we have found a way. I mean, getting an apostille in Cayman, it used to take 3 weeks, right? You know that you have probably you have registered hundreds of companies. We have hundreds of companies in Cayman. All of that, we found a way to solve that problem, right? So I think I would basically say that I think yes, things will get better in Pakistan, but I think diaspora also needs to stop making excuses and get on with the act and say, let's go start in Pakistan. I mean, we'll figure it out. Many people who tell me I have a problem in Pakistan, I tell them, okay, let me solve your problem. You go get started. I'll take care of your registration. I'll take care of State Bank. I'll take care of customs. I'll take care of all of you. Let me take care of it. Yet they don't start. What does it mean? They were just making an excuse. So I'll be really negative here to Pakistan diaspora. I think because they need to step up. I think Indian diaspora has stepped up. I think Chinese diaspora has stepped up. I would say every nation has their diaspora has stepped up. I think Pakistan nation diaspora has to step up as well now.
Sir, on that note, I would actually echo in agreement with you, because as we see with the example of the Indian diaspora, they have actually practically made steps and efforts to achieve where they stand today. And that is perhaps a statement for the people sitting inside and outside as they live stream this session. Taking the last question for this discussion today, we have a question from Mr. Shtaq Ali Mekri. He's asking that Pakistan has for long been in quest of technology transfer, but it has been seen that the arena of interaction is either very limited or non-existent at all. How can this trust deficit be addressed in growing the local talent of Pakistan? We can take comments from all our speakers before we conclude this session. Dr. Naveed, we may start with you.
Actually, I did not understand the question. So what is the question again? Is that there's a trust deficit?
Yes, it's basically, he's asking how can we minimize this trust deficit in bringing the local talent of Pakistan to actually show their interest in this technological space that we're seeing. Mr. Stark, if you would want to pose this question yourself since you're online.
Yeah.
Hello?
Gigi, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, in fact, I wanted to ask that Pakistan has for long been in quest of technology transfer from developed countries, but that in fact has not happened. Either the arena of interaction is very low or it is non-existent at all. Is there any trust deficit that developed countries do not want to bring in technology to Pakistan because there's a lot of talent? We talk of grooming our talent here, but the transfer of technology to Pakistan has been very limited. Would you like to throw some light on that, sir? Thank you.
Yeah, I think there should be a reason for transfer of technology, right? I mean, so let's say I'm Cisco. Why would I transfer any technology to Pakistan? What possible gain I have? So I could have a gain that I could have a development center there. I have some benefits. So I think before we talk about, transferring any technology, I think we should talk about setting up development centers where we can develop some technology. And then when the companies will see that there is a benefit of me to transfer technology because I can develop it there, maybe I can grow it there, maybe there is local market for it. So I think those are the reasons that will incentivize people to move the technology. Right now, I don't see any reason for them to move their technology if there is no basis for us to help them grow the technology in our country.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll take ending remarks from Ms. Ikra and Dr. Ali, and then again move back to Dr. Naveed as we end this session. So please, if you have anything else to add, please go ahead.
Thanks, Juvedia. I'll just add to what Dr. Naveed Shirvani said. Obviously, technology transfer comes later, but as a foreign company, you want to come and invest because either you're looking for good resource and cheaper destinations for developing your products, right? And as Dr. Naveed Shirvani mentioned previously in his presentation regarding the semiconductor industry and why we have an opportunity in Pakistan, we can take that example and build on other sectors in the technology sector in Pakistan as well. And the overarching feedback that we've received through our discussions with foreign companies is that there's a skills gap in Pakistan and we need upskilling in terms of our curriculum that is taught in our universities and even the training that is done. Please don't quote us on these statistics, but only last year alone, and this is only documented, the undocumented numbers would be different, but there were around 80,000 engineering graduates in Punjab alone that were unemployed after graduating. And any foreign company that would want to come and invest in taking those graduates on board would have to invest a minimum of around 6 months of training to actually upskill them and bring them at par where they can then bring that awareness. So to that end, I'll just sum up. I think, how do we address this trust deficit and generally why is STCA here and what the government needs to do for the local and foreign diaspora and other companies is we need to, if not already done, declare an emergency in terms of the technology sector and understand that the technology sector is one of the solutions to the economic crisis the country is facing at the moment. You've got people that are ready to invest. You've got examples here right now. If we entered into a huddle discussion about how many investors we've lined up and how many opportunities Dr. Naveed Shirvani has, and there are hundreds out there. If we have organized efforts as a government and understand the impact that the technology can make on us as a country as a whole, I think that's the way forward that we can determine, that can determine the outcome for a lot of technology transfer, exports, and fix a lot of our economic woes. If you have any questions relating to STZ or want to just have a discussion, please drop us a line, visit our LinkedIn page, and do get in touch. So I'm always open to suggestions and talking. And lastly, Dr. Naveed Shirvani, happy to take forward the conversation on your national action plan and the fund that you're working on and discuss more. Thank you for having us here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ikra. Dr. Ali.
Yes, technology transfer really comes at the innovation economy stage. Pakistan, unfortunately, is not at all an innovation economy. Maybe in a few areas there are pockets of excellence, but broadly not. If I'd give one example of mobile manufacturing, something very recent to Pakistan, we managed to have the DRIBS policy and the MDM policies, which brought in 31 mobile phone assemblers into the country. Now, if you look at it, you start off with CBU, completely built up units, which are imported into the country. Then you move to semi-knocked down, SKD. Then you move to completely knocked down, CKD. Then you move to parts development and attracting vendors. And then really after that, you move to the research and innovation sphere. We are right now stopped at SKD, the second out of 5 levels. And actually, there isn't really the policy instrument, except for some very minor ones, to move them up to the 3rd stage. Now, each progressive stage means bringing in more and more investment, more and more sophisticated machinery, more and more sophisticated skills. So we need targeted, industry-specific, value chain specific research in each and every area, and we can discuss this in the future with you. There are people in Pakistan who can help in many different value chains. We have a big skilling problem. Dr. Naveed mentioned this twice. Ikra mentioned it just now. Pakistan Software Houses Association has a detailed report on it, and we simply wouldn't be able to grow unless we create an education emergency in this area. So thank you very much. Thank you for having us, and available for more comments and interactions in the future.
Dr. Naveed, taking your concluding remarks before we finally end the session.
Sure. I think, let me give you some numbers. If all of you promise never to ever quote me on these numbers, here are real numbers. When we were selecting people for our design center in Lahore at the request of President of Pakistan, who is the chancellor of all universities. 7 or 8 chancellors of leading universities of Pakistan, which will remain unnamed in this discussion, actually sent us their top students, 3,000 of them. 3,000 took our test, 25 passed. These are real statistics. Out of the 3,000, only 20. Now, we're not talking about ordinary students. We're talking about best students of these universities. Subsequently, we did more data on that. We dug into it, and we were able to find out why that is the case, what changes need to be made through curriculum. We are working with those universities. We are working with those professors. But at the end of the day, we have a 9-month-long training program that we have come in Pakistan that is required. Anybody, even comes out of NUST and LUMS, GIK, these are some of the top universities in Pakistan, to go through that 9-month program to be able to start. That's a significant expense of $7,000 to $10,000 that has to be spent by somebody, right? And so that, I think, is as Ikra pointed out very correctly, that is a very big problem that we have to solve. But going back to my initial remarks, I think we should not do a very broad shotgun approach. Let's pick 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever the number of technologies, put together ecosystem for that technology. If it is semiconductor, great. If it is DevOps, great. If it is AI, great. Whatever it is, I think we should pick those a few technologies. I think then we should have a coordinated approach to building an ecosystem so that we have a complete trained manpower, way to set up the design centers and get the innovation going, things like that. And the last one is we have to build international awareness. And I think much is being done, but I would say it is 10% of what needs to be done. And we need more conferences, more dialogue in China. And I think just like STZA did that conference, is 4,000 companies attending, fantastic. We need more of those. We need to have those in US. We have to have them in Europe. So I would say I'll go back to my 3-legged stool, identify limited number of technologies, build ecosystem for each one of them, and then build international awareness to bring jobs to Pakistan. Thank you very much for having me. Really appreciated the discussion. It was always fun to talk to our friends from STZA. They are doing wonderful job in Pakistan, and wish them and your institute continued success. Anything I can help in any way, shape or form, or any of my companies can do, I will do it. So please let me know. So thank you very much. Good night.
It was such a pleasure to have you on board. Thank you so much, our guest speakers, distinguished lecturer, for taking out the time and providing us with such a packed discussion. And we will be more than happy to publish a post-event report, which will be shared with our stakeholders in the government and partners and patrons. This has been a fruitful discussion. Once again, I thank you all for taking out the time for joining us. And with that being said, I hope you have a good day, good night. Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.